Hey everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd. Welcome to another episode of Crazy Cool Controllers, a YouTube series where we take a deep dive down the history of some of history's craziest and coolest console controllers. This time we're talking about the Sega Saturn, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated video game consoles of all time. And rightfully so, because they didn't market it very well, and at the time nobody even knew that it existed, at least in my neck of the woods. And I've heard countless stories from other people around the country, as well as the world, that the Sega Saturn just wasn't marketed as well as it possibly could have. In the States, we had the Sega Genesis that we loved very, very much over here, and then the Dreamcast came out and everybody was all about that, but the Sega Saturn was really passed over by a lot of people, and that could have something to do with the fact that the PlayStation 1 was a huge juggernaut at that time, but nevertheless, we can still go back and enjoy the great console that is the Sega Saturn. For me, this console represents several things that I love about video games in general. It was a 2D beast. Man, this console could play some of the coolest looking 2D games that you've ever seen in your entire life. And we've got a lot of different peripherals to enjoy those games with. So for this episode, we're going to go through all the controllers that I have on the table today, as well as talk about some of the cool peripherals that I do not have for this wonderful Sega Saturn console. The first controller I'd like to talk about is actually one that I don't have on the table today. This is the standard American Sega Saturn controller. It's got that wonderful 6-button design, but the D-pad and the shoulder buttons leave a lot to be desired. I don't know why they thought it necessary to change the design of this controller, because this is not what it looks like in Japan. And at some point down the road, they decided to get rid of that controller in favor of this guy right here. This is the standard Sega Saturn controller right here. This is the black one because in America we got a black console, but over in Japan they got a few different color variants as well as some console variants too. When you look at the Sega Saturn, you'll either see the round buttons or the oval shaped buttons, which indicates the difference between the Model 2 and the Model 1 Sega Saturn respectively. But this is your Model 2 controller. Many gamers feel very strongly about the fact that this is probably the best 2D controller ever made to this day. It just really melts into your hands. You've got a wonderful 6-button layout. The D-pad is really nice and tight and responsive. You've got a start button and 2 shoulder buttons, and that is it, man. That's all you could possibly need for this controller. One interesting thing about it in particular is that you've got some symbolism above the buttons for a CD player. So you can skip and go back a few tracks, and you've got a stop button as well as a play/pause. It's a really, really unique design, this controller, and to this day, it's one of my favorite controllers ever made. Now, this is the American version because it's black, but I happen to have a Japanese Saturn, and it's a Model 1 Saturn, the first Saturn that they ever came out with in Japan, and you've got this gray/blue scheme with this controller right here. It's exactly the same situation, just a different color scheme. This is one of my favorite controllers that I own just because it is so iconic with that Saturn design. I love the blue start button as well. It's a really nice controller aesthetically. Now, despite what you're seeing on the table, you can play most Saturn games with that standard controller and be a happy camper, my friends. It is such a wonderful universal controller, and you have to keep in mind that at this time 3D games were coming out, but the Saturn didn't get as many as, say, the PlayStation did at that time. So this was a perfect controller to use with this system. Whether you were ready for it or not, 3D was coming, so naturally Sega had to do something about that. The N64 came out with its strange controller with the analog stick, so naturally the Saturn had to have something similar as well. So now we have the 3D pad, which was bundled with a game called Nights into Dreams by Sega. I believe this was a game made by Yuji Naka, who famously is the Sonic the Hedgehog guy. Well, he was kind of put over here in the corner to work on some different games that aren't just Sonic for that time, and ironically, we never got a proper Sonic game on the Sega Saturn as a result. We got Sonic R, which is a questionable racing game that some people like, some people don't. The soundtrack is great, some people love that or hate that as well. And then we got Sonic Jam, which of course is a compilation of Sega Genesis Sonic games just on the Saturn this time. But this is a really nice attempt at a 3D controller here. You've got this kind of nub situation that really is springy and it goes back to the center like that. The D-pad is the same as before. This is kind of a spaceship looking design that is obviously the predecessor to what would become the Sega Dreamcast controller. It's a polarizing thing, this controller right here. Some people love it, some people hate it. I really do like it, especially for playing a game like Nights into Dreams. Here's the Japanese variant of that. It's a white design with a lot more color on the buttons, as well as these pink triggers back here. One other cool thing about this controller is the fact that you can detach the controller cable. So as you can see, there's no cable attached to this, and that's how I like to keep them displayed. I don't know exactly why they did this. Perhaps it was because maybe they planned on doing some sort of other peripheral that would go along with this in the future, but of course that eventually never happened. The Sega Saturn 3D Pad is one of the cooler controllers from Sega, especially for the Saturn. If you like Nights into Dreams and other 3D games such as Panzer Dragoon, this is probably a good bet for a controller for that system. Excuse me, when did you get here? I'm in the middle of something right now, and you're very nice and very sweet, but you're in the way, so we're going to have to move you. Maybe you can sit over here behind us. There you go. So that covers the basic controllers that you would get for your Sega Saturn. And again, the majority of the games will take full advantage of those two, and you'll be just fine if you only got those two controllers. However, there are some other cool things that we can take a look at that came from Sega for the Saturn at that particular time. The number one thing, of course, is the arcade stick, man. What a wonderful pastime it is for arcade sticks in this era, man. This is such a really cool idea to have arcade sticks at home, and I'm so thankful that we got these on multiple different iterations of consoles, not just the Sega Saturn. But this arcade stick right here, this is your standard Sega Saturn arcade stick. Now, we did get this over here in the United States. However, this guy has micro switches, and that was like a myth when I was a kid. But the urban legend was that, yes, we got the arcade stick, but it was black like everything else was for the Saturn at that time. And the black one, the American one, did not have micro switches in the stick, but the Japanese one did. And I'm so glad to finally have this one from Japan, because now that urban legend has been proven true. It is a micro switch joystick. It's the exact same controller, only this one's better because it has micro switches. The buttons don't have the micro switches though, which is totally fine. For the time, this is a great controller. You've got your wonderful 6-button layout, as well as your different turbo toggles for shooters and stuff like that. There's a plethora of fighting games on the Saturn. Street Fighter 03, we got Last Bronx Fighters, Mega Mix, the list goes on and on. Dead or Alive, the first Dead or Alive is actually on this system as well. There's a lot of great 2D and 3D fighting games on this system. The Darkstalkers series is great as well. It's an amazing console for arcade-based games like that. Speaking of arcade-based games, we have the Virtua Stick. This is kind of sort of the same situation, but it's just a little bit different. This looks more like your Sega Astro City cabinet that you would see in Japan back in the day. This one also has a micro switch joystick. The buttons feel really great. This has pretty much the same thing that you would have on the other arcade stick, but it's much thicker. It's a very thick boy, and you've got the wonderful color scheme that you see with the blues and the pinks and the greens and stuff like that. Now, just like I said in my Dreamcast peripheral video that you can find in the description below, I replaced the ball tops with the bat top just because that's the kind of guy that I am. I've got bigger hands, so it's really difficult for me to do well with the ball top. I feel like I have a lot more control with the bat top just because it fits my hands a little better. So that's the only modification that I've made to this Virtua Stick. However, there are videos of people on YouTube that really love these things, and they will go inside and modify them with new buttons and a Sanwa JLF or whatever, what have you. But this, unlike the Sega Dreamcast arcade stick, is a little bit more difficult to mod, considering the fact that the buttons are actually soldered in. So you have to unsolder them and pull them out that way, which is really a shame because this is a great arcade stick, and it's so freaking great for the fighting games that you'll find on this system. I'm really happy to have this guy, and now I have both arcade sticks for the Sega Saturn, which I'm very, very happy about. It's very important to note that the Virtua Stick in particular, as well as the next peripheral that we're about to look at, were only ever sold in Japan. So how do I have all this Japanese stuff on the table despite the fact that I'm living in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas? The answer to that, of course, is JP Fans. JP Fans is a middleman service between you and real-life sellers located in Japan. You'll be very surprised to see how many great deals are on this website for peripherals such as this for the Sega Saturn and Sega Dreamcast, even Nintendo stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff on there that's for sale for surprisingly cheap. So you browse the website, you add everything that you want to the cart, and then you pay for it. All your stuff is then shipped to the JP Fans warehouse, where they carefully package it all up and send it to you worldwide in one big package, saving you a ton of money on shipping that way. Over the past few months, I've gotten so many great, cool Japanese exclusive controllers, peripherals, and video games thanks to JP Fans. And just for watching this video, JP Fans wants to thank you by giving you a coupon for 50% off of your first order, as well as up to $86 in free shipping. JP Fans is a great website if you're looking to get a bunch of stuff at once. For example, Sega Saturn games. Famously over here in the States, American Sega Saturn games are very, very expensive, and it could take you quite a while to save up enough money just for one heavy-hitter Sega Saturn game. However, in Japan, the games are still in abundance, and they're very, very cheap. So if you're trying to get a head start on a large collection of Sega Saturn games, that's definitely the way to go. The big thanks to JP Fans for reaching out to me in the first place, because if they didn't, I wouldn't have all this cool stuff on the table to show off in this video. Speaking of cool stuff to show off, I got myself the Twin Stick for the Sega Saturn. I've coveted this damn thing for a long time. I've had the Twin Stick for the Sega Dreamcast for a long time, and it's great, but I always wanted to try the Sega Saturn version, especially because the Sega Saturn is a really popular console to go back and do fan translations for. There have been so many great fan translations over the past few years for the Sega Saturn, but the main one that I'd like to talk about that's relative to this specific peripheral is a game called Bulk Slash. This is one of the most unique, beautiful 3D games on the Saturn. I think it's probably the best 3D game on the system, if we're being real. Basically, you fly around in like a mech, and you have objectives, and you kill enemies, and there are different missions of different varieties. So one of them is just destroying a few different objectives, and then the other one is like an escort mission. But this is a unique game to try out with the Twin Stick, especially with that fan translation. It's in English now, and it's a really, really unique game. If you've never played the Sega Saturn before, this is definitely a game worth trying out just for that system. And I'm really happy to finally add the Twin Stick to this collection of mine because it's a really cool looking thing, man. And we're going to look at another Japanese peripheral here in a second, but I can't wait to tell you how much I paid for all this stuff because you're just not going to believe it. It was a steal of a deal, and I'm super happy about it. But before we look at that, let's take a look at the other American controller that I got. This is like the mission stick for your Sega Saturn, which is kind of like a flight stick. The interesting thing about this particular controller is that you can have the stick on this side or on this side. You can actually rotate it and have it go around to where you can operate it with your left or right hand. It doesn't really matter. That's a really unique addition to a controller like this. It's very similar to the arcade stick, meaning that you've got your turbo toggles and stuff like that, and you've got the 6-button layout as well as your left and right trigger buttons there. But with this particular controller, this is great for all sorts of different unique games on the Saturn, such as the Sega Ages Afterburner. That's a really good one. You could also use this to play Space Harrier on the Saturn. That's really what the Saturn was all about, is giving you great arcade experiences at home, and now we have the peripherals to accurately do that. There's a lot of games that you could test out with this thing. Admittedly, I haven't used it as much as some of the other ones. I'm more into the fighting game aspect on the Saturn rather than some of the flight type games, but still, this is a great peripheral, and you can still find this for pretty cheap these days, and I'm really glad to have it. And finally, we've got the steering wheel for the Sega Saturn. Now, this did not come with foot pedals, and I believe there's some controls on this that will allow you to do the gas and the brake and stuff without needing the foot pedal. But what's really interesting about this is that you can lock it and unlock it, and you can have it pointing straight up, or you can, oh God, that's loud. You can also point it like that. This particular steering wheel came from Japan only, although I do believe we had the American version that was, of course, just black. There's a lot of cool racing games on this system as well, such as the iconic Daytona USA with that wonderful soundtrack. It's a really good time, and it's one of the better racing games of that time, in my opinion. So I got the racing wheel, the Twin Stick, and the original arcade stick with the micro switches all in one big package from JP Fans, and it cost me like $30. I'm being absolutely real about that. Yes, shipping was a factor. It cost money to ship these things. But as far as the items themselves, I found a bundle that had all three of them. And the crazy part about it is that the steering wheel and the arcade stick had the original box. Unfortunately, the Twin Stick did not have the original box, but I don't care. For 30 bucks, that's an amazing freaking deal on that JP Fans website, man. You guys are sleeping on it, and I will warn you right now, if you sign up for that with my link, you get that 50% off. This website can become very addictive, and you might get on there and not find exactly what you're looking for, but just like every other website like eBay or Mercari, if you get on there on Monday and it's not there, you might check back in on Thursday and voila, there it is. I got a lot of great deals on some Sega Saturn stuff as well as some Sega Dreamcast stuff in the past few months. And I'm really happy that this website exists because otherwise I'd have to fly to Japan to find all this stuff at great deals like this. We can't forget about the Sega Saturn's ability to play light gun games. We got the Stunner right here, which is very orange. Now in Japan, the gun was black, which, you know, it's just a different time. We would never think of a light gun in America being, you know, black, looking like an actual real gun usually, but this one's orange, so you can tell that it's a toy. It's definitely not a real gun, even though it kind of looks like one, despite the fact that it's this crazy bright orange color. But you've got the Sega logo right there, and it's just a trigger and a start button back when light guns were very, very simple. I really do like this. It's a great light gun. It's very responsive. The go-to games that you would play on the Sega Saturn as far as light gun games go would be the original House of the Dead, which is a given, but there's also a game called Virtua Cop, which is very, very, very fun to play, especially if you've got a buddy that wants to play those games with you. Of course, you need a CRT television in order to play light gun games, but this was a different era, different time, and everybody had light gun games for their systems back in the day. Sega Saturn Stunner is a great purchase just for House of the Dead alone, just because it's a great game on this system. We should probably at least briefly mention the new controllers from Retro Fighters here, and I say new, they've been around for several years at this point, but the idea with this is that it's a wireless version of the same controller that we've seen at the beginning of this video, that wonderful Sega Saturn 6-button controller. This is the original version that they came out with. It's 2.4 gigahertz wireless, which is really, really great, and they had a bunch of different colors and stuff, which was really nice to see. But then later they came out with the Pro controller, which actually has 2 thumbsticks on it, and it's very similar to the Switch Joy-Cons as far as the thumbsticks are concerned. However, you can use this on your Sega Saturn as the 3D controller if you so desire, but you've also got a 2-in-1 package. You could use this on your PC as well as your Switch, I think. So it's really a 3-in-1 package, I suppose. So you got 3 different consoles that you can use this controller with. So it's a really good purchase if you're looking into getting into your Sega Saturn. Don't want to have to deal with a bunch of cables and, you know, cable extensions and wires and stuff like that. I really do enjoy these two. This is kind of my go-to Saturn controller when I just want to sit down and play a game really quickly and not have to deal with all these peripherals. But that being said, I do pull out the arcade stick a lot more to play those fighting games on this system. Now there's a lot of stuff for the Sega Saturn that I simply do not have, and there's probably a lot of stuff that I'm gonna miss in this video just because in Japan they got a lot of crazy stuff compared to what we got over here in the States, but the main thing is the mouse and the keyboard. On the Sega Saturn, you had a mouse and keyboard all the way back in the mid-90s, you know? And it's crazy that we even got a mouse and keyboard for the Sega Dreamcast, but it actually does exist for your Sega Saturn as well. Another peripheral that most people might want to look at for the Sega Saturn would be the Multitaps. Famously, there's a game called Saturn Bomberman that allows you to play with 10 people at the same time. As long as you've got the controllers for it and the multitaps to handle all those, you can play 10-player Bomberman, which is insane. And by the way, that's a great game too, Saturn Bomberman. I was never the biggest fan of Bomberman, but that particular game does have a lot of charm. The music is great, and the level design is wonderful. It's a really, really cool game with a lot of fun boss battles and stuff. It's a great 2-player game too, not just for 10 people. You could also get a direct link cable to link 2 Saturn consoles together. I believe this was mainly used for a few select racing games if you wanted to, you know, race in the same race together but have 2 separate televisions. That was a really cool thing to do back in the day, and I remember doing something very similar all the way up to the Xbox 360, but the System Link stuff is kind of a thing of the past, unfortunately, and I guess that's to be expected because look at that TV behind me. People have big OLED televisions these days that they don't want to move around, but back in the day, if you had a CRT, as long as it wasn't a huge 20-inch, you know, like a 13-inch CRT, you could comfortably move that anywhere in your house. It's just a different time. And the last thing is the Netlink Modem. Famously, there's an online edition of that Daytona USA that is very, very expensive, very hard to find these days, but you could play online if you had the Netlink Modem, which is crazy to think about. It's a cartridge that you stick in the RAM slot of your Sega Saturn, and voila, you connect it to your modem and you can play online. I am totally unaware if that is still a thing these days, and if it is, I would love to do it myself, but finding one of those Netlink modems is kind of difficult to do here in the States, but you could easily find one in Japan for not that much money. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this overview of these wonderful Sega Saturn controllers to enhance your experience on the Sega Saturn, which is a really good word to use, by the way. All of these peripherals existed to enhance your arcade system at home type feeling with the Sega Saturn. You don't have to go to the arcade anymore to play mission stick games or arcade stick games or even racing games or even the weird stuff with the twin stick either. These peripherals and sticks and different controllers were designed to give you a unique experience at home, and that's why I love Sega so much. They gave us all this cool stuff with all these different unique games, and that's what I remember this console for, is having the most unique games with the peripherals that allow you to access those in the most unique and fun way possible. Well, I'd love to know which one of the peripherals on the table is your favorite for the Sega Saturn. Which one do you own? Which one are you coveting the most? And what's your favorite Sega Saturn game? Let me know the answers to all those questions in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching, as well as checking out some of the other cool videos that I've got in the description below that are just like this, and I'll catch you guys at the very next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.